Good morning, everybody. Things are broken again because, of course, they are. Why are they not broken? Come on. There it goes. Alright, so. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Yeah, it turns out that I've just lost 3 contact lenses because for some reason today they decided not to stick to my eyes at all, which, yay, isn't that fun? The glasses from yesterday are still missing, and these will be my last pair of, Honey Bunch, Carmia, I am trying to find my glasses. I've literally lifted up my bed, which, by the way, is one of those big IKEA beds with the storage underneath it, and it's not inside of it, it's not underneath it, it's not behind it. So I am trying, sweetie, I swear. But when you wake up in the middle of the night, with your leg cramping 3 times and you're sprinting, I did check the top of doors, and you're sprinting to try to, get the cramp out of your leg. It does happen that you may potentially knock your glasses off or throw them someplace. I don't know what happened to them, because waking with 0 sleep, feeling like somebody's tearing your leg off, does make it hard to keep track of where they've gone. Not caught in the bedsheet. I'm searching. Promise. I promise. I am a person who loses things a lot. I looked in all the normal spots. Sweeties, I have checked there. You can say, hey, have you, yes. Have you checked? Yes. Yes, I have. Have you checked? Yes. Yes, I have. Have you checked inside the freezer because you thought maybe, hey, you might have thrown them in the freezer for no reason? No, because it wouldn't make sense? Yes, I have. By the door? Yes. Inside the box next to the door? Yes. On the cabinet? Inside the cabinet? Inside drawers that you don't usually open? Behind cabinets? Underneath cabinets? Underneath the pile of clothes that was sitting there? Yes. Yes, I have. I promise you, I'm going to keep looking. And I will try to find them. Exactly. Because I wanted to be sassy. But yes, and now I have almost no contact lenses because while trying to put them into my eyes, 3 of them fell down the sink. So that's fun. Because for some reason, instead of sticking to my eyes, they folded in on themselves and then fell off my fingers. So, luckily I've ordered a new pair of glasses because those glasses were broken anyways, but we'll see how things go. Okay. Hopefully they get here. They were supposed to get here in 2 days, but unfortunately, the glasses company meant 2-day shipping, not we will do them and have them completed to you in 2 days. Maybe you should just not see. I've thought about that. I've thought about that before. Unfortunately, I do have to drive because I live in America. And America is so heavily reliant on the car. But yes. And also, I guarantee, lovelies, as amazing as you are, you will have no way of assisting me with finding my glasses or anything. Unless I were to, turn my camera on and walk you through it. So don't worry. I promise I have this. Get back from eye doctor? What do you mean? No, y'all, I am good. I'm informing you of a situation. I'm not looking for solutions. Don't be a guy right now. You all are fine. I lost 3 pairs of contact lenses. I do have 2 in my eyes right now. Thank you. Contact lenses are not free. What do you... No. Lovelies. Shush. Hang out with me. You're not solving my problems, and you can't solve my problems. Maybe where you are. We're good. We're good. Okay. Thank you. I'm not going to tell you about things anymore. I'm not telling you all about things anymore. I'm just going to keep these to myself. Good morning, Anna Apocalypse. Thank you for getting first. Thank you, Brookie, for getting second. And thank you, Rengoku's wifey, for getting third. Thank you for checking in, Katamia and Catherine and Brookie and Anna Apocalypse and Onyx. Thank you for checking in, Macaroni and Addie and Ellie and Sakona and Poca. Good morning, Assassin and Pan and Boku and Paranormal and Naptime. Good morning, Meow, Kitty Cat and Dwarf and Bouncing Rubber Ball and Ash and Tequila and Catherine. And good morning, Kakashi and Vividly and Lilith. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So, don't know what I'm going to be doing this morning, actually. Not a clue. Maybe some Minecraft. I think Minecraft might be fun. But again, I feel like that game you survive too easily. There's so little punishment, you know? Not that you need punishment every game. But the fact that all you lose is items, and the items are so abundant, just makes it not even fun. Maybe even in hardcore, living above the ground just doesn't do it for me. So, and again, I hope your work goes well. I really do. I really do. I'm eating candy this morning for breakfast because I didn't have time to make food. It's very tasty. What's the game, Jinxie? What's the game? Maybe that might be the satisfaction for me. As long as it's not Terraria or Starbound. Because I just don't like the 2D vintage story. Alright, let's take a look at it. Welcome back, welcome back. They are. It's come to my attention that I don't know how to spell vintage, apparently. Is it not on Steam? How dare it not be on Steam? That's crazy. Oh. Weird. Why? You have a good one as well, Yosono. Sleep well, or whatever you're doing. Get some sleep, Macaroni. You got this. Enjoy your sleep. Okay, it does look Minecraft-y. Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting. Okay, I'll have to look into it more. It might be something we're not doing in the mornings, because, the mornings have this certain vibe. And I don't know how the game's gonna do. Enjoy your sleep, Anna. I'll play normal Minecraft for now. And hardcore, and then I'll have to check this game out later on. But how did everybody sleep? Or how's everybody's day been going? I don't know what time it is for you all, but I assume it's off the beaten path. What was that noise? That was really weird. Odd. Enjoy. Yeah. Does look very cool. I guess that makes sense for some people. Probably start your whole work day. Okay, let's get this game going. Why is that? Okay, 1 second. Let my brain readjust. I swear every time I open something, they decide to add more and more things to it. And Minecraft just did a thing that could have potentially doxed me, which would have been awful. Okay, we're good now. It's gonna be a weird day, I can already tell. It's like the whole day is just wanting to be a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. But that's okay. Things will get better. Yep. Except Discord is open, so it shouldn't be there. So why is it there? Yeah, I know. What happened with you yesterday? Would you like to tell me about it? I am curious. You having a boring? I think I'd like a boring day. No issues, just vibes and existing. I think that'd be nice. Oh, that sounds lovely. Going to a park would be amazing. Do wolves like sandwiches? I mean, personally, for me, sandwiches are one of my favorite things. I do hope that they enjoy them as well. Are they? Is it okay to feed a wolf a sandwich is I guess, the better question. What kind of sandwich do you feed a wolf? Not like peanut butter? Do Brits have peanut butter? Hmm. That's messed up. This is why doctors need to learn to shut up. I don't know. Why don't you have tacos? Why do you have brown sauce? Oh, I forgot to mute that. 1 second. Thank you so much for the follow. Greatly appreciate it. Should I not eat bread? Not that I'm a wolf, but it makes me worry. Will my digestion possibly have issues with it? Should I be more concerned? There we go. I like rain noises. Are we talking like fry sauce from like In-N-Out? Got it. I'm only eating bread from now on. To prove I'm not a dog, thank you for the follow, Yummy. Or Yumi. Got it. I will only feed gluten-free bread. I'll exclusively feed gluten to nap time. We're gonna go and take all the flour, remove all the flour from it, and only have gluten. Yeah. Insurance companies should not allow to have doctors on staff who aren't even looking at you. Because the funny thing is, okay, well then what happens? Do you just deal with not having the surgery? No, obviously you still need it. They should not be allowed to have a doctor on staff that they consult. Oh, no, I mean, nap time is gluten intolerant. That's why I was telling them to only eat the gluten. Not intolerant, celiac. Alright. Well, I guess we don't really need to talk about how many things the states have wrong with them. Carb is BS, it is. Do you know how to make, no, I'm not really doing anything. I'm just walking around. I didn't really want to play crime scene cleaner today, and this is more of a, thing to fill the gap right now. Or just walking and walking. I've wanted to try that actually. I've wanted to try making my own flour from wheat berry. I think it'd be really cool one day to like make something completely from scratch. And by that I mean farming the vegetable and the grain and the wheat itself and grinding up into the powder, mixing it with everything else. Because I've done up to the point of, of course I've made bread before, and I can cook pretty much any kind of food. But I've yet to make flour. I've never milked anything. Oh, words. Good morning, YouTube. I haven't actually successfully grown a vegetable. I did have a vegetable, a planter box. And apparently, Colorado's weather is so dry that you need to water the plants constantly. Well, having only really dealt with indoor plants, I let those things dry out, and they did not succeed at all. They grew nothing. It's not that I didn't water it, it's that I watered them like I would an indoor plant. I just don't have the knowledge I need to properly take care of them yet. One day, though. That's why you live in humid, to grow plants? Interesting. You know what I want to do? I know what I want to do. I've never been to a mansion in this game before. That's another thing. I used to live where it was humid. I used to live where people would come and breathe and feel like the air was soup. But now I live near the mountains. And the mountains, they do not treat you kindly. I'm a mile above the sea. The farthest I've ever been from the sea. Oh, there's not even a dark forest there. Do you all know what the dark forest is? A concept in extraterrestrial life. The dark forest theory? So, one of the questions is, why have we not run into other life? Yes. And Fermi's paradox. Because it does not seem that life is so unique that it should only be here. 1 second, everybody. I'll be right back. Well, everybody, sorry about that. That's the problem with being on call is you do get calls every once in a while. But everything's all right now. Mm-hmm. Hello, Donko Fog and Wampus Fierce. How are you all doing? What were you doing this morning? Mm-hmm. I know we had some bad timing with that. 2 raids. Oh, crazy. Were you all hanging out, or did you both just decide to do this randomly together? Let's see. Do we get shoutouts for them already? Mm-hmm. I want to go see what you were doing. I'm going to come stalk you real quick. Okay. Wait. ASMR. Were you ASMRing together? Pumpkins? Did you carve pumpkins? Oh, that's so cute. I want to carve pumpkins. Mm-hmm. You shouted out the wrong person, but very close, very close. Let's do a little shout out for Dong Go Fong. We'll get there, we'll get there. But thank you, lovely, lovely raiders. I really appreciate you coming by. And welcome, welcome. My name's LuckyJene. I'm a gambler, a writer, and a villain in progress. Today we're just yapping away, playing some Minecraft. So if you need to raid and run and go do your stuff, feel free to do so. But if y'all would like to hang out, chat, and vibe with us, it'll be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Man, I want to carve pumpkins now. That'd be nice. Maybe I'll get a pumpkin to carve. I don't know what I'd do with it. I guess set it on my balcony. But it would still be nice. We're gonna keep playing a little Minecraft here. Except the game has decided to run away from me because of course it has. Why wouldn't it? You made a Gengar lantern. Oh, that sounds so cute. You do gotta make holidays fun. Alright, I've lost the game. Chow, we've lost the plot. The game is gone. Oh no. Can't behave yourself. What are you doing? There it is. You painted BMO on your lantern? Oh, that's very cute. All I've done so far regarding pumpkins, I guess it was a coworker of mine. He brought in a bunch of pie pumpkins, and he brought in stickers so you could put little stickers on your pumpkins. And so I did make that cute little pumpkin yesterday, which was very sweet of him. Definitely something he didn't have to do, but it's nice to see somebody who wants others to do things together. Of course, half my coworkers were not at work that day, so perhaps the gesture was lost on them, but for the rest of them, I'm sure loved it. Hi, Addie. I'm sorry, you haven't slept since when? Hey, Carmia, do you mind helping me out here? It seems like somebody's using my stream as a way not to sleep. Hmm. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be the best option here. And since you have not slept and are not taking care of yourself. Thank you. Had a bad night. Well, they should still be able to see stream. And they can listen. But they need to be trying to sleep. You want timed out? Go ahead and time chum out. Exactly. I will not be doing timeouts on demand beyond this one. Why does breakfast candy not exist? There needs to be breakfast candy. Something that's in a bag that lasts a long time that I don't have to worry about, but also isn't that bad for you. No, that's not candy, that's cereal. I want something that is best on its own. I mean, I guess like fruit, maybe, but maybe what I really want is just candy that's good for me. Why is that not an option? Smarty cereal. Yeah, but dried fruit isn't good for you, unfortunately. Dried fruit has a lot of sugars, and in small amounts it's totally fine. But you would not want to eat it as a whole meal. I mean, fruit snacks aren't healthy for you either. All these things to get the gelatinous form either use things like pectin and sugars that will be cooked down into gelatinous form or jello, and they are sweetened to the point that they don't have much nutritional benefit. Not necessarily that they're going to be awful for your health, but they really don't serve an adequate starting meal. The only thing I could think of would be, yeah, plain normal fruit. Yes. I mean, not only does our brain thrive on sugar, it's the only thing that it uses to sustain itself. Sugars and or ketones. Do you all know what ketones are? Should we nerd out a little bit about ketones? No, no, this might be the end of this one already. Because the skeletons have been oh so very mean. Your ears are falling. Have you tried not to fall? Ketones are a sugar substitute the body produces by processing fat. In some situations, it's been known to reduce the cause of seizures. Oh no, that one died. The keto diet relies on ketones, and while it is possible to survive on fats, it is not necessarily healthy for the body. unless done correctly. Yes, the brain can survive on just ketones. And the only reason we know this is due to a theory that these sugars were causing seizures, and it did turn out that for some patients with epileptic seizures, keto diets are very beneficial to permanently prevent their seizures. That being said, thank you for the follow. The only reason a ketosis diet works in the first place is that it is significantly more difficult to eat for people losing weight, that is, it's significantly more difficult to eat a large amount of calories of just proteins and fats versus carbs and sugars. It's not a magical thing that makes you lose weight. It's just like all diets, a reduction of calories. Oh, dark forest theory. So, dark forest theory. If you've ever heard of Fermi's paradox references why we've not been able to find extraterrestrial life. Because as we expand further and further out, we feel like we should have run into something. One of the solutions to Fermi's paradox is the idea that maybe life is just so unique, which as we find more and more curious life on this planet, including life forms that can survive that are arsenic-based instead of carbon-based like we are, and that live on the edges of volcanic vents, we realize that things should be able to survive in a lot more places. The next solution to Fermi's paradox is the Great Filter, which that idea is that as a society advances, something always occurs that the society crushes itself out of existence. For instance, war, famine, whatever. Exactly, there should be thousands of planets with life. Well, their last theory, that is one of the more interesting ones, is the dark forest theory. Now, as we've seen on our planet, we have limited resources that people will fight over. And so one of the thoughts is that perhaps there's something out in the universe, or maybe land is just so in demand, or livable planets is in demand, that it is a limited resource. And dark forest theory theorizes that the universe is a dark forest, full of hunters attacking anything that they hear and move and see, in fear that something else will take them out. And so the idea is that everything is being quiet, hiding in a dark forest to keep itself alive, because it's afraid someone else will take them out. Which is even more scary when you think about it, because we're constantly screaming out into the void, sending radio signals and everything else. We're like a newborn baby dropped in a dark forest that nobody has taught yet how to be quiet. That's the dark forest theory. That's fun, Jimmins. The book The Three-Body Problem talks about it a lot. But the three-body problem is also a very, very, very terrifying book. In like an existential terror way. Oh, I think about the ending and it was fantastic, but it still made me feel so uncomfy. I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing, Yuki? three-body problem? Of course. So, the three-body problem is a book about, well, at first is about a game. It's a bit of a thriller. Follows a few different characters. And I'm glad you're doing all right. My brain just shut off for a split second. Give me 1 sec while I come back. There we are. So yes, it follows a few different characters who, well, scientists have started, and different big thinkers have started ending their own life in a way that, doesn't really seem to make sense. And our main character has suddenly started seeing a counter in the corner of his eyes. Or one of the main characters. Like something's counting down, telling him he only has so long left. And he finds out he gets access to this game called the Three-Body Problem. In it, it's a pretty much full VR virtual reality game where you play a species on a planet orbited by 3 suns. And these 3 suns orbit each other, and the planet, the main planet, orbits those 3 suns. The objective of this game is to have society last as long as possible. And so they're brought into this place, all trying to figure out how to handle 3 bodies orbiting each other, calculating it, because these people in this game have this unique ability to dehydrate themselves. They deflate, wrap themselves up, put themselves in a space of safety, and whenever the sun is back into a position where people can survive again, they then, unravel. So it seems like the first goal of the three-body problem is finding out a way to allow everybody to survive and exist. And the story continues along that path as they try to solve this problem while also dealing with things in the real world happening, and more dramas are occurring. I will say, without spoiling much, that it is a dark book that considers the uniqueness of life and the path our society may take in this world. One of the books is in modern day. One is, well, not modern day, but near modern. Another one of them is further into the future. And another one is far future. It's a very psychological, existential thing. Thank you for the follow, by the way, Jacobs, and welcome to the menagerie. You're gonna stay with Allie and her whimsy. Allie's whimsy's nice. Yeah, there's... I could not read the books. I tried. I had to listen to the audiobooks. And the audiobooks are great. Oh, wait, that's right. And one of them, there's a project called the Wall Facer Project. And the point of the Wall Facers are that they're people that cannot be affected by society or governments. They are independent. They're given a certain amount of funds. And their goal is trying to make sure that humanity survives and continues to grow and prosper. They're not allowed, no one's allowed to influence them or tell them what to do. And as long as they have, the political power at the time, they can do whatever. And that was unique. I think I'd be a really interesting position to be in. And what I really liked about it was it showed how each branch in society kind of tried to figure out how to survive differently. Oh, no, Kamiya, you're 100% right. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah. You give somebody, and these people were chosen, you know. One was more of like a big mathematician guy. One was a big, more free thinker. And they're only able to really think as far as their expertise allowed them. And one of them was pretty much a normal guy. And he was my favorite. Mm-hmm. What's not scary nap time? Having all that power? True. Very true. I think it'd be cool, though. Oh, I can talk about my favorite anime. I do have one, though I always forget about it. My favorite anime is Eden of the East. I do love Eden of the East a lot. Though I don't know if it holds up anymore. Eden of the East is about Japan. So, there's a bunch of people in Japan, and they were feeling more of like how the world seems to not be going the way they want it to go. That they want to make sure that Japan thrives and prospers. And one man took it upon himself to give a bunch of different people a phone. And on this phone are two things. One, a concierge that seems like it can do anything, and a very, very large sum of money. Here's what the plan is, or what was said to these people. They're given a certain amount of money, and they're told that they need to fix Japan. That the concierge on the phone can do anything, almost anything, but will use the money that they've been granted to do so. If they succeed, they're given an insane amount of money. But if they were to fail, or they run out of money, then one of the participants will come and take them out. And if they choose, not to use the money either, they'll also be taken out. Once you agree to the game, that is. Good morning, Dar. And one of the things that's brought up in there is that Japan has been attacked by rockets that blew up a large chunk of Japan. And the people who live there somehow were saved from the situation, as in they were evacuated, though nobody knows how or why. Our main character starts without his memory, in front of the White House, walking towards it with a gun, completely naked. And he meets a Japanese student who's there on a study abroad trip, who's there before they're trying to get into the workforce. And she kind of helps him out while he tries to run from the cops and escape and make it back to Japan because he's a Japanese citizen. He has no idea that he's part of this game, and then slowly starts figuring things out as things go on. It's very good. It is very good. I do like thrillers. If I put everyone to sleep, was that boring? Do you not like watching me in a coffin while I wait for day? I've killed everyone. It's okay. Eden of the East. Feel free to interrupt. Don't worry. If I don't want to be interrupted, I'll ignore you. Enjoy your drive. Oh, that's fair. Make your picnic. I hope you enjoy making your picnic. You just enjoy listening. That's also fair. I think it's funny. Oh, that was almost very painful. Y'all are sometimes inconsistent. Some days you wanna yap a bunch and you'll talk between each other. Other days you'll go completely silent while I'm talking about something. It's always hard for me to figure out which one it's gonna be. That is a really big gate. Why not both? Well, it can't be both, I'm sorry. Now we just sit and wait here. Oh. I don't really prefer it either way. My main worry is that when you don't say anything, I'm like, oh, did they leave? Or has my stream died? I want to see what this is. That's why you twerk. I appreciate that nap time. Keep twerking for me. That sounds so weird to say. Getting jiggy with it. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. You don't have to be awake. Please don't be awake. I'm sorry. I am sorry, lovelies. I take it back. I take it back. You are totally good being absolutely silent. Alright, treasure map. We're going to Treasure Island, Charlie. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed this. I'm sorry, Shani. Let's see if I can find those places. I didn't notice you asked for the southern voice. Imagine a certain dominance like that. Walk up in the club like, what up? I'll be twerking. I woke up in the club like, hey, what up? I got a big cock. Nah, I'm just bummed. I bought some shit from a thrift shop. I feel like the world was a little better place when white people got called honky. Nobody's ever called me honky before. I feel left out. Morning, Echo. Thank you for the check-in. Oh, Alex. I have lost 3 pairs of contacts so far. It's okay, though. Life is but a dream. Life can be a dream, sweetheart. Hello, hello again. It's yesterday, part 2. But you know what's great? You know what's great? I gotta be here. I am alive. Life is nice. I met some cool people. Things aren't bad. Things are interessante. And I want a tequila sunrise. I want So, I have a fear, lovelies, that if I do make it as a streamer, I will not survive. Hear me out. I rely right now on a bi-weekly paycheck, or a paycheck twice a month, right? Not bi-weekly, I guess it is bi-weekly. So, with that being said, it means that, I get paid and sent. Yes, Twitch pays once a month. I bought a vertical waffle maker from the TikTok shop because I thought it'd be super cool. A vertical waffle maker. And bi-weekly is fine. But if I get paid once a month, well, because I wanted waffles. Okay, hear me out. I have no easy breakfast right now, and I want to cook more things, right? Good morning. And I thought, it'd be nice. I could make like savory waffles and a bunch of other things, like in my mornings. If I had a waffle maker, wouldn't that be great? And wouldn't it just so happen that there's a waffle maker right here? And you can pre-make waffle batter. I could have going probably for like a week. Also, I have too many eggs, and I don't have anything to use them on. And so I thought, if I get a waffle maker, then I can use up the eggs I have making waffles. This was made by Ninja, so it's a good waffle maker. And, I bought too many eggs because the eggs were on sale. They're like normal egg price. So I bought 68 eggs for 72 eggs for about like $3 each. So it's like $9. And then I bought a $90 waffle maker. Yeah. So, because I didn't want to, waste the money on the eggs. So clearly, to save money, I had to buy a $90 waffle maker so I can make waffles. I also don't have sugar right now, so, yeah. I had to order sugar, which will be coming today, but, yeah. So I saved money on waffle mix that would have been so expensive. You want a girl math buying a chat? How am I alive? Very, very barely. Yeah, but I don't want frittatas. I want waffles. And I don't have time to make frittatas in the morning, but I can make waffles the evening before and eat those. So clearly, waffles are what I should be doing. Also, good morning. Thank you for the follow. Tomo Isa. I'll make waffles. I'll make savory waffles for everybody. Life can be a dream. I'm so excited to try it. I tell you all, I bought a nice juicer, but not nice as in expensive, nice as in it actually works and is very, very effective. I haven't bought fruit for several days, for several weeks now, but for a little while, I had a delicious, amazing, healthy juice that was incredible to have. I do. Well, but Chad, I'm broke. How can I afford you? How can I afford fruit right now? I don't have any money. I don't know what happened to my money, but I don't have any right now. Oh, well, yeah. I don't have any money, though, so it's not like I can buy the other stuff. Y'all are lucky that I'm at least the fiscally responsibleness of does pay his rent and make sure he has money. Like, I'm broke in the sense of I have bills to pay, not broken in the sense of, like, I will be out in the street if I don't get money. I'm like the okay kind of broke to be right now. I just happen to make myself suffer randomly, constantly. Because if I were to do it differently, then I would not get my nice, fun purchases that push my dopamine to the max and are like, ooh, pretty. Guess who gets waffles now? Me. I'm gonna be the waffle man. Streets. Waffles on the street corner. Chibbits, I thought you were telling me to prostitute myself. I mean, I've thought about it, but I'm not willing to get into good enough shape for that. I mean, I've thought about a lot of things. I've thought about robbing a bank too. Doesn't mean I'm gonna do it. Oh, sorry. Chat, I forgot to tell you, I'm a writer. I've thought about how I would kill all my friends if I ever needed to. I wouldn't. I would never want to kill my friends. It's just a mental exercise. Right? Yes, I'm actually Mr. Ender. Ender Game! You want to talk about Ender's Game? That's one of my favorite series, is even if the writer is not a good guy. You don't think about murder? That's fine. I do. I like writing horror and murders, though. Did I ever tell you all about the OCD murderer novel I was writing? I might write it for NaNoWriMo this year. The idea was a character that's just kind of really pretty average, pretty normal, but obsessed with putting things in the right place in the right order. That he felt like his life was how it was supposed to be and everything was right. He worked in logistics and he loved setting logistics correct. Just really inputting numbers, data crunching, making things right. He hated having to work with other people, but you know, they were fine for the most part. And as long as he was effective, you did not read it, but I did read it out loud to you. As long as he was effective, others could be as well. He had a system to everything, to how he would put on clothes. For instance, he made sure his clothes were layered in the right order. Things had to overlap. How he would try to start always with his underwear would be the first thing he'd put on. Then, shirt, because that goes over the underwear. Well, you'd wear an undershirt. So, underwear, undershirt, shirt, socks, pants, belt, and lastly, to top it all off, usually a tie. Because that is how he imagined clothes go through. Clothes are layered. And if they were ever done in a different order, he'd have to take all his clothes off if he ever got distracted for even an instant, and then put them all back on again. He had no carpet on his floor, except spaces where there was the foam, that is underneath the carpet. Because one day, while he'd been putting his feet down, always the right one first, then the left, he had thought about how many little loops there are in a carpet. And he realized he didn't know how many loops there were in his carpet. And not knowing that number was so upsetting to him that he had to sit there and count them. But then he'd lose count and he'd have to do it again and again and again and again until he finally ripped out the carpet and got rid of it. So now there's only the foam left over. When he walked, he always walked the same amount of steps. Every day to the same place. He'd walk down the street, go to a little cafe, grab a blueberry bagel with plain cream cheese. It was always the perfect amount of sweetness. And since it wasn't a well-known spot, they always had his order ready. He'd head into work, do the same work every day, go home, and once a week he'd get his hair cut, always by the same barber, always to the same length, and never a different style, always tipping the exact same amount. Thank you for the follow, by the way. Greatly appreciate it, and welcome to the menagerie. So, one day, a new employee joined the workforce. And from the moment our main character met him, he felt wrong. He didn't wear a long sleeve button up with a tie. This man wore an opened button up shirt with a t-shirt underneath it, slacks that were more like jeans, clothes that seemed comfortable but not appropriate for the space they were in. And all day, all the main character could think about was how the man's button-up shirt had been slightly buttoned wrong. One button had been missed. He couldn't bring it up with them. He's not that kind of guy. He doesn't confront people. He doesn't really talk to them unless he really, really has to. So all he could do is be there and remember that that one button was wrong. Hello, Pink. Well, it starts affecting other parts of his life. See, it seems that that man who's now working at his workforce lives near where the main character lives. And just so happens to also enjoy going to cafes in the morning and blueberry bagels. And so once he goes to get his usual, he finds for once they're out of stock. And the more things go on, the more his life gets slightly changed, slightly upset in the way, away from this little perfect system he had before, until it's all he can think about is how this one man is making his perfect life, his simple, easy existence, no longer perfect. Exactly, Ben. He obsesses over it, and to the point that he sees this man everywhere, that every little thing that goes wrong in his life is that man's fault. Until eventually, days start passing by without the main character noticing. He even misses work at points. And suddenly he finds himself coming out of a fugue state and drove an apartment door that he only somewhat recognizes. He goes to knock and finds the door open. And there, laying in a pool of blood, is the man who's been causing all of his issues. And so, what does a man do who's obsessed with making his own life perfect? Who thinks that there's others out there who are ruining his life, and to a greater extent the order of what the world should be? Of course, initially there's panic, fear, planning on calling the cops, trying to figure out what's happening, and then he has a moment of clarity thinking, did I do this? Well, his life goes back to normal, things get better, and he realizes that he righted a wrong. And maybe the world needs people like him to right these wrongs, to take out things that are not how they should be. He's like putting things in order his whole life. Maybe he could do it on a grander scale. And so the story follows this character as he is, at the time, locked up in a police cell, recalling a story of how he descended and what he did. With, of course, a twist at the end, because every thriller needs a good twist. That was a story I was writing a while back. I never finished it. Why is the dwarf perceiving... What? What's happening? Why is... With what time do I have to write? Vanya, stop sneezing. Meow. I've done them in the past. I do need sleep, unfortunately. I have been cursed by God to require sleep so it is not fair that I be required such things. I have G-subs. I can make you a coffee. I need to go get my favorite coffee, though. I haven't had it for a little bit. I know. If only I didn't have a body, honestly. Body, yada, 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 yada. I don't think I've ever listened to that full song. Wake up, grab a brush and put a little makeup. Hide the scars, fade away the shake up. Why'd you leave the keys upon the table? Thank you for the subscription, Dwarf. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Really appreciate it. I don't think you trust in my self-righteous suicide. I cry when angels deserve to die. Thank you, Anon. I do appreciate you. I feel like I was talking about something else before I talked about the story. I really need to work on my ADD. I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm just walking back and forth. I enjoyed fighting all them skillymans. Why'd you have the keys upon the table? There you go, create another fable. You want to? And I don't think you trust in. Oh, waffle-induced debt, yeah. Yes, Vania, my obsession with waffles has led me to almost financial collapse. The end is nigh for me. The end is nigh. No, I have not, perhaps. Sorry. Maybe another time I can perhaps, but today is not that day. Oh no, but I need a waffles. Buy a Waffle House? You know, I could run a business out of a Waffle House. Unironically, I have thought about buying a franchise. I couldn't afford one. But I imagine how nice that'd be to own a franchise. But then I have to learn how to, run it, and... Oof. Welcome to the menagerie. Did you know about different... That's it. Hey, Wolfa. Do you need dental work done, sweetie? Because I love you to bits. But I'm very worried that waffles are hurting you, unless case you're eating... Oh, is this a gum pain or is this a tooth pain? Because if it's a tooth pain, can I suggest like a Sensodyne toothpaste? It is very helpful. It will help build up the enamel on your teeth and will make eating a much more pleasant experience. As a person who went through depression where I didn't take my as good care of my teeth as I needed to at the time, Sensodyne really helped a lot. I'd try Sensodyne anyways. And you can make soft waffles. They don't have to be crispy. I can make you some soft, fluffy waffles. But the reason why I wanted waffles is because a waffle maker is very easy to clean if you have a good one. And I can make individual batches of waffles with little effort for myself. Unlike pancakes, where, I have to actually pay attention to them a little bit. Well, you should brush. So, Wolfo, sweetie, you should get Sensodyne toothpaste. We're gonna start doing daily check-ins with everybody, because I need them as well. And it is so hard for me to focus on myself and take care of myself in a way that is... But if there's others that I'm doing with it, it makes my life a lot easier. And you should. So, we're going to do little check-ins in the morning. Chat, have you brushed your teeth? Have you eaten? Have you showered recently? If you haven't, take a look at the list and do one of those. So, Volva, you gotta go shower. Go shower, sweetie. You should go get some food then. Get yourself some food. Proud of you, Lucy. Why are we asking Carmia if they're proud of you? Oh, Echo, sweetie, thank you. That's very sweet of you. I'm glad that I've gotten to become part of your lives. Are you throwing it back while chewing? Naptime is looking for you to be proud of them. I wonder why my game is lagging today. Do you think it's because I have too many worlds? 1 second. Oh, do you want some really good eggplant? Do you want some really good eggplant? Miso eggplant. I make a miso maple eggplant. And here's what how you have to prepare it. Remember, if you're making yourself an eggplant, you start with cutting it straight in half, and you cover it in salt. The salt's going to pull out the more bitter elements of the eggplant. You let it sit, and then you wipe off the salt. You then take the eggplant, slice it in a checkerboard or a hex pattern. You make your miso rub, put it on the eggplant, throw it in the oven, let it roast, pull it out, and eat it. It's creamy, it's delicious, it's miso-y, it's savory, little sweet, and amazing. Thank you for the follow, LSD. I've always wanted to try LSD one of these days. One more until what? Until I explode? Oh no, chat. I'm about to explode. Give me 5, 4, 3, 2. Anyways. That's a quiet explosion. Ooh, cave. Hello, cave. All caffeine does is block the receptors in your brain responsible for tiredness. Stimulants, however, as caffeine is, can help quiet the louder parts of people with ADD's brain. So if you do feel a benefit and feel tired when drinking caffeine, it's not that it's making you more tired, because it is blocking the receptors. It's that it's allowing your brain to quiet itself so that you can actually allow yourself to sleep. Why am I talking about this? I don't know why I do a lot of things. Don't ask. Oh, I love the flavor of coffee, but I enjoy tannins. Not all enjoy tannins, and that's fair. And some people have a higher sensitivity to tannins than others, which is what makes coffee better. It is also found in things like red wine. So if you dislike coffee, there's a more chance that you will also dislike red wine. In that case, you may not like the alcohol portion of it. I mean, there's also several other things that have technically near stuff. You do like matcha? I enjoy matcha. Matcha's good. Oh, Vietnamese coffee. That's a different thing. The Vietnamese drinks in general, I think Vietnamese and Thai are so much different than any other of the same thing. Good morning, Chicky. How you doing? You've been coming by more regularly lately. Should I feel flattered? Are you asking me, or are you asking me about the lovely or the morning? Because I can't remember what I said now. Ah, there we go. Oh, morning, morning, morning. So today is a work from home day, so we will be streaming a little bit longer than normal. Not too much longer, though. But it will mean... Oh, it did say evening. I just woke up, too. So I'm gonna need you, I sound like a villain when I laugh, no matter what. I am flattered. Alright, 1 second while I I need to go grab my work computer real quick. So, y'all sit here. Be patient. And talk about what your favorite breakfast food is while I'm gone, okay? That way when I come back, I have something to read. List favorite breakfast foods right now. It's going to be less than 3 minutes. No, you know what? Let's talk about the pancakes part here. You know, I've thought it's interesting when a lot of places do pancakes with savory sides, because pancakes has always been a thing on my own, right? Like it's like a sweet thing. And so throwing pancakes with like a savory meal has always been weird to me. Good morning, Kimizu. Muffins are good too. Have I told y'all about my favorite pastry I've ever had in my entire life that I've only had once as a young preteen and I have never stopped thinking about? And only recently did I finally figure out what that dish was. It was a berry souffle. A berry souffle. And I had it with a hot chocolate, but one of those worst, one of the worst hot chocolates in a good way. I mean, like, so overloaded. Hey, thank you for the follow, pagan person, and thank you for being 2,400. One of those hot chocolates, and by worst I mean worst for you, where it's like whipped cream with chocolate chips, with more cream inside, with a chocolate drizzle across the top. It was so chocolatey and sweet that if I had it now, I'm pretty sure my teeth would immediately start hurting. But at the time, it was the perfect thing. Especially with the berry souffle. And to be honest, I don't know if I can remember what it tasted like, but I just remember it was so good. The texture is so unique. The flavor absolutely amazing. And I have never had anything like it since. I could probably even draw the cafe from memory. I know it was really simple. It had a weird, like, raised up little platform. So you'd walk up some stairs and it had this kind of corner door. Immediately to your right was the barista, some college kid, behind a glass counter. And in the glass counter was all their different pastries. And I think what was happening is that they'd have some of the local, thank you for the like, pagan person, have some of the local college students like make up whatever foods they wanted because, they were in a culinary program. And so the pastries were never the same. So even when we returned there, I was never able again to get the same dish. I went there because my mother was a college professor at the time, no longer. And I guess she knew some of the people who worked there. So, yeah, I think about it a lot. Oh, and the way I found out the recipe was, I don't even remember. I feel like years later somebody mentioned it. I don't know if it was Vonnie in this situation, but years later somebody mentioned like what it could have been, and they described it, and I looked it up online, and I'm like, that was the dish. That was absolutely the dish, because I remembered it being in a ramekin, and it being like kind of a little bit over the top, and you scoops it out. And so I had this look of it, how it looked visually. And when I finally saw it, bam, all the memories came flooding back. One second, I need to get my work computer ready. There we go. And we're back. It was good. It was so good. Now a little check-in. How's everybody feeling today? What are we all up to? I would hate my... Pumpkin pancake sounds delicious. I wouldn't hate myself if I were bald, but I think I'd have a long time getting over not having hair. Genuinely. My entire life I've had very curly, thick hair, and so it'd be a very, very massive change from my usual standard. Even my grandfather had hair for the longest time and only really lost it because he started like cutting his hair too short and getting sun damage. I'm glad you're feeling better, Sinful. I like living underground. I know it's weird, but I like living underground in this game. It just makes me happy. Let me enjoy my little caves, okay? Let me live in my little goblin caves. It's nice in my goblin caves. Stop judging me for living my goblin life. Are you gonna insult my goblin wife next to? Her name is Glorp. Of course, Boy Wally. I miss all of you. I strictly play Minecraft to build cool houses and caves. I like having the restriction of the small space. It's nice. Glorp is a lovely lady. Cave life, best life. Cave life, best life. Mm-hmm. I hear water. Let's go get water. Oh, that's sad, Vova. Well, as one of the many things that'll be unlocked in the Donathon will be a Minecraft world with some very minor mods. So if you are interested in us one day having a Minecraft world, you know what you need to do. Brain bucket. That's what I want. Alright, tell me about it, nap time. Donathon has not been decided yet. The goal is to hit 50 average viewers consistently for about a month. And if we are able to hit that, then we'll be doing the Donathon. Oh. Who is it, a Boeing? Please tell me we finally have some new companies that's not Boeing. It's a Boeing, isn't it? But it is cool. I'm excited that they have a new flagship. Oh. Oh, yeah. Well, that is exciting. How big is that? Is this more of like a international flights plane? It's huge. Oh. Yeah, 'cause I thought Airbuses are mostly school bus. That's exactly what it is. It's big and yellow. $787. Ooh. I don't know what those numbers mean, but I'm sure they mean something. What do they mean? Do you know? It mean big. It mean big. You right. Did I ever tell you all about the worst flight I've been on recently? I'm doing what I used to do with my dad. My dad used to always get upset at me for starting every conversation with, "Hey, did you know?" He's like, "Just tell me. If you want to tell me something, just tell me." So, not recently, but like less than a year ago, I took a flight over to Europe. But the flight stopped in Iceland. And so we thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to just, lay over in Iceland instead of going straight to where we were going? So yeah, we did that. And it turns out, apparently the distance from Colorado to Iceland is small enough that they can use the Continental airplane, the one that goes from, East Coast to West Coast. So I was on one of the tightest, smallest flights I'd been in the longest time, from Colorado to Iceland, which is, 8, 9 hours, maybe 10. In awful, awful seating with so little space. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. I will never again fly into Iceland unless I'm staying there. It was, yeah, I'm 6'4". I was in pain. That's also the flight that I cracked my tooth. I think I cracked it because of all the stress I was in from being crushed like a sardine. And thank you for the follow. Or the stretch, nerdy fandom trash. Let me do the... I don't like Boeing. That's just my own personal preference. I've always had good experience with Airbus. Well, no, that would have cost more money. And flying international was expensive enough. Plus, I was going to get a tattoo, which I have now. It's a nice tattoo. Oh, I don't doubt that. But comfort for me, Airbus has always been nicer. I've just had better experience with Airbus. Yeah. You may be surprised, though. I really don't care about the pilots. Mm-hmm. I do. I have one very large one. I plan on getting some themed after the new model, once that comes about. Which that'll be interesting. I may even get a little voidling tattooed. My little voidies. Hello, little voidies. How's my little voidies doing? Chad, who's a good voidie? Who's a good little voidie? Is it you? You're not good? How dare you? Wow. There we go. Gibbets, you're an endangered species. You're legally required to be good. Good. Proud of you. Oh, Chicky. You too? I will revoke your endangered status. It can be you too, dwarf. Oh, really, Calypsy? I'm such a cute little puppy. I'm sure you are, Chicky. I believe it. Can you phone a friend? Yeah, I called my friend. They called me a goblin. Oof. Ooh. I want a milkshake. I drink your milkshake. Would y'all be interested in watching an improv game, by the way? I had the thought of trying to just straight up steal Sam Reich college humor game, dropout game, Game Changers. Well, no, the Make Some Noise. So, because they do the one bit that I thought was really funny where it's like, all right, give me this line. How would you deliver this line? And this one was, I drink your milkshake. I drink it up. And then they always do the classic, give me some more. And so the next person does it, more energetic. And another person goes, give me some more. And usually they'll do it twice. But this time he just kept going, give me some more. And he did it over and over and over again until they're basically screaming. It was so funny. It was so good. And I think that'd be so much fun to do with people. Oh, I'm not going to spoil any more than that. And even me describing it does not do it justice at all. Because how they do it is so incredible. I mean, you can't describe improv to somebody and have the same experience. I can explain to you one of my favorite improv games I've seen that I've never been able to do, which is the Change. The one where they have to improv a scene and the guy goes, no, change. And so they keep, changing all of it. And you get some crazy interactions where they're like, I was talking to your father, change. Your mother, change. Your gay lover. Okay, keep going with that one. I just, I don't know if I'm good enough at improv or if I know anybody who's good enough. New choice also works, yes. I don't know if I know anybody good enough at improv. But would y'all be interested in watching a show like that, even if they aren't any good at it? Just me and some people goofing off and having fun. Sweet. Maybe I'll make it like a weekly thing. Because also think of like, I took an improv class. It's one thing for me to kind of ad-lib here, but another thing to do it in front of other people, especially in an environment where you're relying on other people and getting kind of used to that. I can be goofy, but being goofy in a way that makes sense is where I struggle sometimes. Yeah, exactly, sinful. We're now participating. Kind of fun here. Oh, all right. There's another bit that I want to do, which is the objection. I mean, it's the final goal, the real goal here, is I want to run an active courtroom scene where I get to be a judge, and then two people have to come on as lawyers, and they have to defend or go against a topic I choose. But the objection game itself is, you just shout objection when somebody says something that's wrong that you can go against, and then you take over the conversation, and that's fun. But I've never gotten to play it because I don't have any friends. I have some online, like Dar. Dar's cool. Hi, Dar. Dar, did you know that you're cool? Bye, Volfa. Go take a shower. See, that's a problem, Dar. You're gonna do better than me, and then I'm gonna be embarrassed, and I will cry. Just kidding. I'm not kidding. My box is too far away. Thank you, Pinky. I stole them from you. They're actually your followers. You might notice your numbers are down slightly today. I went in and I just took a few of them. Don't worry about it, though. I will not be giving them back. Thank you for that, Pat. Yeah, I just skimmed them off the top. is that so funny to me? Why is that so unbelievably funny to me? Yoink. Hmm. I'm just imagining more like physically stealing the followers. Just like sneaking into their houses while they're sleeping and be like, you're mine now. Sorry. Sorry, Pinky. They're mine. Keeping them. Actually, I kind of like that. Ooh, my brain just did a thing. Oh, too much drum. I don't want drum. Never mind. I take it back. All right, brain's back. Hello, lovelies. Isn't that just so upsetting? When it's like, this hits the perfect vibe, and then they're like, no, no, no. Here's this other instrument I don't like. Bad instrument. Ooh. Ooh, I like the way you think. Hey, Mommy, were those bars there before? Eat your cereal, dear. Mommy, there's a weird guy standing outside. He keeps just poking the window for some reason. I don't know what's going on. That's just Gene. He's imprisoned us. It's fine. Mommy, he keeps talking about voidlings. I don't know what those things are. He's getting really excited about lore. He's explained like 5 or 6 books to me. Mommy, please make the man stop explaining things. Anyways, that's how I imagine it will go. We are the voidlings, child. Hey, did you brush your teeth? Hey, did you take a shower? No? Oh, that was... Oh. Okay. Give me a second. I need to explain what just happened. I almost had a heart attack. You know how we got raided earlier? The lovely Don't Go Fog. Well, I had pulled up their stream earlier to look to see what they were doing. And the stream was like, I guess, on standby. It's like playing their intro and stuff, but it was all quiet. And so suddenly I hear the pew. I'm like, what was that noise? It turns out it was them. Because the stream finally got up to a place where they were making noise. But I was like, How is somebody talking to me right now? Am I like in a call? Have I been live streaming myself this entire time in like to somebody directly? What's going on? Pat had a heart attack. New short idea. Hey, in there. Hey, 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 hey. That's not breakfast. That's not a good breakfast. Where's your meds? You know your meds need food. Eat the food. Then you can take your meds. Come on. Leave the lurk. I did not take my meds, but I take them right before I start working, usually. Oh, speaking up, we are coming up on to 6. Yes, let me field IT goals through work. But yeah, so I do need to start work today. So I'm gonna have to let all of you go. Yeah, I'm sorry I have to let you go. But we'll find somebody to raid out to, okay? It's been a good stream. I've enjoyed hanging out with you all. Chat, eat your food. Take your vitamins. Oh, Yuki. What's Yuki doing? Alright. You're allowed out for a little while, okay? Y'all come back later. Don't forget. 5 p.m. tonight. We're doing a collab, so we're going to be starting a little bit later, okay? You've all been so very, very incredible today. I appreciate you. Mwah. I gotta let you go. Here's a little raid message. I copy the raid message. And I will see you all next time. Bye.